inmate at the Salinas Valley State Prison, Soledad, California. This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded. To accept this call, say or dial 5 now. Thank you for using Global Tel Link.
Hello.
Hello, Free.
Oh, hi, Rudy. How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Good. Aaron and I had a good conversation last night. I'm sure you're aware of.
Yeah, I was over at I can't even think of the word. I was over at a friend's house helping fix a computer, and she said that y'all had a good conversation. Yep.
Yeah. Have you heard it? Did she share with you the
no,
things we talked about?
I got home real late last night, and I spent all day this morning at church, and she said something about she got some links for me to print out and mail to you, and that's on my things to do for tonight.
Yeah. Basically, I had heard a radio broadcast yesterday about 5:45 our time about something going on in Chicago that it turns out she had heard about, and maybe you have also a few days ago or in the past week or so, about mass exonerations of prisoners in Chicago. Big scandal, probably the worst scandal they've ever had out of all the judicial scandals that have come out of Chicago. As of that broadcast, there were 42 prisoners that had been exonerated and freed based on the crimes committed by a certain police sergeant and some of his workers with him. So they specifically, quote unquote, talked about the ways that they obtained the false convictions were planted evidence, unquote, filing of false police reports, unquote. Does that ring a bell to you about some of the exact type of things that I have in my 3552 that I've absolutely proven? I think it does.
Right.
So that's exciting news for me because, I mean, it's not the first time it's ever happened that I've become aware of it, but being that they have the doors of the courtroom closed to me all the time on procedural bars only, I'm going to use that. That's why I asked if not only Aaron, but I'm asking you and anybody else that I talk to, that keep your ears open or try to find different articles about that particular event in different publications on the internet, and I want to get as many of them as I can, hopefully a good handful of them at least, and I want to attach them to a petition that the court should give me the same consideration under equal protection law as those guys have gotten there. And, I tried to do the same thing when the coroner, Angelo Zoe, was busted for falsifying the Nelson Galbraith autopsy report, and when he committed perjury before the Ninth Circuit Court about it, and they wouldn't do anything. But you never know. I keep trying, and there are a lot of different judges there now, ones that are different ones than were there back when I tried that, 15, 20 years ago. So that's going to be my strategy. I consider it a number one priority. So any, the higher quantity, the better, of different articles on the same issue, even if they basically say the same thing. If they're in a different publication or a different news outlet online or a different news outlet on TV, radio, if you can get printouts of them, send them to me, please, and I'm going to give it a try again.
You bet. And I hope I'll do the same, and I hope anyone listening, and I hope you get flooded with articles. So. Yeah.
Okay. Great. You've got my address out there for anybody that wants to write, correct?
You bet we do.
Okay. This is one of the quotes that I mentioned to Aaron last night. The commentator closed on it was like a 5-minute news broadcast, and the commentator closed saying about one of the guys, he said, 4 years taken away for nothing. I mean, that is significant. As I said to Aaron, 4 years, 4 days is too significant for somebody who doesn't deserve it.
Right.
But compare that 4 years to my 35 years, and hopefully that impact will find its way to some other commentators too that will not only using this for court, but using it to see if other news people, maybe we can get their attention based on comments like that, and them recognizing how bad 4 years of false imprisonment are when you're innocent compared to 35 years. Matter of fact, in 4 more days, I start my 36th year.
Wow, incredible.
In CDC, not counting the jail time, although my jail time is very short.
It's amazing.
Let's see.
No, just the fact you've maintained your sanity these 36 years is absolutely incredible to me, but that's a huge testimony to Christ. So we'll definitely get those articles printed off free and try to get them mailed to you.
I appreciate that. I wanted to talk about, I just make a list of things that, I want to put out there. This is such a wonderful opportunity you provide me with that in all the years I've been in prison I've never been provided with, to just get this information out there. So I make a list of different headings of things. One of the things I wanted to put out there is how I actually got brain damage in prison from a staff setup. So we've talked before about my having brain damage, but I don't think I've ever put out there exactly how they did it and what they did. And it's not necessarily typical of the treatment of prisoners in general in California or maybe other places, but those who are specially targeted, oftentimes because we've litigated against CDC, we've been whistleblowers against some of the brutality.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Brutality by guards or murders by guards or other, real bad crimes by guards. And I don't, I've never set out on any kind of crusade to expose anything, but just in the course of trying to get some of those abuses off my back, or in some cases where, like, they really tormented a blind prisoner, or they beat somebody really bad that, didn't assault them first, that sort of thing. There have been times when I've, exposed that for the sake of exposing it, but usually it's been things that they've done to me that I've just tried to get a remedy for and try to get it stopped from happening again and again. And in the course of that, they consider that whistleblowing, and they twist the idea of being a snitch or a rat, which I would never be. I don't get involved in anybody's business. I don't ever betray anybody with what I know about their business. But they twist it to think like I'm one of them, like I'm one of the cops, and if I say something that exposes their crimes, they act like that's snitching, and that's the worst crime in the world in here. So they've set me up 13 documented times to be murdered, and that's not always the reason why. They often don't know the reason why. They actually just pass it on to other guards that they find are willing to play that game, that have that same evil, demented mentality and sadistic mentality that love to inflict pain and injury upon other prisoners. They just pass it on, saying, this guy is fill in the blank. I don't even know what they tell him, but he's to be mistreated with the worst kind of treatment. Give him, out here they call it the special treatment, and that's the term they use a lot of times throughout the years, sometimes to my face. Special project, they call me a special project. So in this particular instance, what they did is there was a free, what we call free staff, when they're not actually guards but they're employees. A black lady known as chain smoker Gail. Somebody recently told that was familiar with this episode in my life at another prison years ago. It was at Lancaster prison. He said her last name is Grace, so I think her name is Gail Grace. But she worked in the laundry room. That was her job. And she had all these inmates working under her auspices. And one of them was a high-level gangster. I won't mention his name or what gang he belonged to. It wasn't the white gang. All the gangs in prison are divided up into different races. And she had him go to some of the white boys that were gangsters and semi-gangsters and shot callers that order other prisoners around as to what they're going to do to practice violence or murder somebody. And she told them that I had filed a complaint on her, so some stuff going on in the mailroom, which it turns out I never did. It's just that my reputation for filing complaints has got so blown out of proportion for so many years in CDC. Let me give you an example of that. When I was at CMC prison for a year and a half, any guard you would ask, a lot of them never saw my face, never even knew who I was, but knew the name Lazor. Any of them you would ask, about how many lawsuits they thought I had against that particular prison, they tell you, well over 100. Everybody knows that. And I've never had one. In my whole life, right up to this day, I've never filed a lawsuit against anybody at CMC. I should have, but I didn't. So that's how bad the reputation got out of control. So she just made this up or was told by somebody else that I filed a complaint that affected her and her laundry room. And so she asked them to take care of me, to do the special project of violence. So they got, eventually I had the names of 10 white boys that were part of the gang cults in here, the gang cliques, and at least 10 of them got together and lured me to a particular place without me knowing it. My cellmate was involved, unwanted cellmate, and downed me. They're cowards, so they don't come to you one-on-one to your face to fight. I was probably an adequate fighter back in those days, much younger, 2001. So they downed me, and then several of them stomped my head in and stomped my whole body, my chest, and everything real bad, to where just 5 minutes later, looking in the mirror, there's no way anybody could have recognized my face, including me. So there was a lot of crazy stuff that happened. They said that I got lost in the system. I was sitting in the hospital room, the prison infirmary room, for many hours from that time, which I believe it happened in the late morning, all the way till late at night, well after dark, and they finally took me off the yard to another prison yard on that same facility, saying it was easier to move me than move all those other guys who should have been rolled up to the hole for what they did. They weren't. And they had to fire gunshots and all that stuff to stop the brutality on me. So none of those guys got punished as far as I know. I went to a different yard in the prison, a different semi-facility, and they said they lost track of me. I mean, that's ridiculous. How do you lose track of a prisoner? In prison, we're counted every several hours. So they said they lost track of me. No doctors saw me, nobody. So the next day they came to me and said, "Oh, we found you, and we're going to have a doctor see you today." So all this time, over 24 hours, I'd never seen a doctor yet. And that morning at 4:30 in the morning, like 4 hours or 3 hours before the doctor was to come see me, about 7:30 or 8 in the morning, they put me on a bus. It just happened. The timing just happened coincidentally to be I was going out to court for some litigation I had, that was started 3 or 4 years earlier somewhere else. They had me on a bus. I was passing out on the bus, having seizures and all kind of problems like that for the first time in my life from the head stomping. And eventually it took like weeks to go through the out to court thing, get back to the prison, and by then they said there was no issue. And it took me a year and a half to get any kind of medical attention. By then, things in my brain had changed back to where, I connected certain synapses and did a lot of work to get my coordination stuff back. I couldn't even walk 3 steps from the bed to the toilet in the cell without landing on the floor and the whole world spinning around and being heaving because I was so nauseated from it. That's the condition I started out in. Now,
this call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
My guitar playing is poor. My volleyball playing is not good at all, fairly poor, but sometimes I have pretty good days. And, so that just gives examples of how far I bounced back. But that's what happened. That's how they do things in CDC, or at least they did things in CDC. There's still a lot of that going on at different prisons, but the prison I'm at, there's really none of that sort of thing at that level going on. So I want to clarify that. I don't want people complaining about me being treated that way today here, but it's just one of, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of episodes of things like that, violence things that I could tell about, to give you guys an example, whoever's listening, of what kind of stuff they do in here. And there's no remedy for it. The courts don't care. The courts are in the pockets of the powerful California Department of Corrections and their prison guard unions, the CCPOA, California Correctional Police Officers Association. It's when that CCPOA was founded back. It was after I came to prison, sometime after 1983. I think maybe the early 90s or maybe late 80s. I can't remember exactly when, but whenever that was founded, I think it's the worst political thing that California's ever done. Out of the many ridiculous and outrageous and crazy things California has done with their legislature, governors, and whatnot, I think that's the single worst thing is they made prison guards, which have always been for hundreds or thousands of years recognized as lowly, bottom of the barrel, often scoundrels, sort of trash, if you want, for lack of a better word, of the humans of society, gravitate toward that type of a job, and they made them into professional peace officers on equal level or higher level than police officers on the street and then sheriffs on the street. And they're paid.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
Pay skyrocketed accordingly. Their benefits and their pay is still just unbelievable compared to real police officers on the street, some of whom really risk their lives daily. And, in prison, it's mostly like babysitters. Occasionally, some officer gets hurt or killed by a prisoner, oftentimes because they did some really bad things to a lot of prisoners for years. But basically, it's a real easy babysitting job. So that's a whole mouthful.
You have 30 seconds remaining.
but I wanted to get that particular episode out there, so it'll just be one more episode you can add to all the things you put out there.
You bet, Free. We will.
Go ahead. You got the.
Okay, no, we just recently also received a letter of a prisoner's death in Florida prison named Wesley Moore, where he was put in the same space as another guy, and they put a lock in the bottom of a sock. That's not the first time I've heard that particular method, putting a lock in the bottom of a sock and bludgeoning a guy to death. But our prayers are with you. I'll try to send you some articles on the fraud, and we just ran out of time. So you heard Free. He's recounting some of the horrific situations that have occurred to him over the past 35 years. I don't know how this man has maintained his sanity. He will begin on his 36th year in just a few days. And I pray that you keep Free Lazor in your prayers and don't ever take your freedom for granted.
Call from
Free again if you're able to take it.
an inmate at the Salinas Valley State Prison, Soledad, California. This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded. To accept this call, say or dial 5 now. Thank you for using Global Tel Link.
Hi, Rudy.
Hey, Free.
I don't know if you know where you were cut off. Anytime, like if I call back like this, which I sometimes am able to and sometimes not, if my calls are going to be too much, just if you don't take it, I understand.
No problem.
You were talking when you were. Okay, thank you. When you were cut off, you were saying about the lock in the sock, and you might have talked on for a while without knowing you're cut. So go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I was just telling you that being in the prison ministry, and we get a wide swath of prison letters across prisons in the country. There was a gentleman who identifies as Christian, and he said that there was this man by the name of Wesley Moore. Wesley Moore, I think he was 22 years old. He didn't marry, but he had sexual relations with a 17-year-old girl. The girl ended up being his wife. He ended up having 3 children with her, but because he was a registered sex offender, he had to register every single year for the rest of his life. Well, he got to be 35 years old. I think he was 35 years old, and he says, "I'm not going to register as sex offender. I married the girl. She's my wife, mother of my children. I'm not going to do it." Well, anyway, they went and put him in prison again, because he won't register. So he was going to be there for 6 months. They put him in the same area as a double homicide guy. The double homicide guy, puts a lock on the bottom of a sock, bludgeons the guy to death, kills him. Anyway, when you look up the news, try to find any news about it that's being released by mainstream media or the prisons, all they say is just a very short 2 or 3 sentences about Wesley Moore prison inmate death. It's under investigation. They don't say anything at all. But we got a 3-page letter from one of the individuals that was in the same prison as Wesley Moore, and they claim that Wesley Moore was a Christian. He was attending Bible studies with a group of other white Christians, and that this black Muslim who was known for a double homicide, known for being violent, was put in the same area, and that he took the opportunity to kill him. And that's really what happened, is that there was animosity between this Muslim and this Christian man, and he was going to get out in 6 months. There was no reason that they need to be in the same area. So when I think about you and other prisoners, it's just you guys do have a horrific life every day. I told everybody at the end of our call, because I heard when it hung up on us, everybody on the outside should never take their freedom for granted, because it's such a wonderful thing, that we have, and I pray that the Lord gives it to you soon. I can't even imagine Free 36 years in prison. 36, and you still have your sanity. It's just, it's incredible testimony.
Yeah. Well, our Father has...
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Some very good gifts. I credit him for the ability to make it through all this so far, and however much longer this goes on. Yeah, that kind of thing is not, everybody knows, I guess it's fairly common in prisons, and it's really sad because there's virtually never any punishment for it to those who set that stuff. The prisoner may get punished somewhat. I don't know why they don't have automatic death penalty for killing prisoners like that, but the people that allow it and that set it up and that cause that guy to get celled with that guy or in that area or whatever, they know what they're doing. In fact, I'll mention this quickly and then I'll move on to something else. There was a band of those type of guards up at Pelican Bay State Prison. Pelican Bay State Prison, when I was there, was noted as the absolute worst prison in the country for all its violence and horrors and whatnot. And now it's nothing like that because of all the attention that came from the abuses and the horrors up there. But when I was up there in 1990, 94, 95, and 96, there was a lot of that sort of thing going on with guards involved. Guards would get all the guys that had molester or rape jackets, which is the two things that, is just anathema to all prisoners. That you come into prison and you learn, even if you didn't have that kind of mentality, that you never associate with any of those kind of people, and you want to shun them. And if you get involved with the gangs and all that stuff, which a lot of prisoners feel they're forced to in order to not be killed themselves, then they have to go and murder or brutalize those people. And I mean, I've seen it happen so many times, even with some real old, frail guys, and cases where here's the real tragedy is I've seen it happen with cases where a person was later found to be totally innocent of any kind of such crime. So anyway, up in Pelican Bay, there were a guard named Michael Powers, David Gene Lewis, and Garcia. I can't remember the first name. All three of them got convicted of manslaughter. They should have got convicted of a whole bunch of multiple murders. Lewis stayed out on bail and got his conviction reversed, and they never refiled it, so he walked scot-free. Powers did some prison time for manslaughter, and so did Garcia. And Powers, I worked for Powers, and he had a hit out on me, even though I've never had any kind of jacket like that, but he would just throw my name in with the mix of the molesters and the rapists and say that, I was somebody to be hit. So I had a hit contract on me for a whole year and a half up there. It was well known. Guys that were friendly to me, that knew that I was a solid, what you call a real solid person and did not have one of those bad jackets, kept telling me, get off the main line, roll up, PCF, because protective custody, because you're going to be murdered. There's my friends have a contract out on you. Well,
how do you get off the main line? How do you get off the main line? You have to go break a rule on.
You can go to in California, at least. You can go to the staff anytime and tell them, my life's in danger, and I got to be rolled up to the hole. They'll roll you up to the hole. Roll you up just means they send you to the hole, and they take all your property out of your cell and box it up, or steal what they want and box up the rest of it, and you go in the hole until you get transferred somewhere where it's safer, that sort of thing. But a lot of people don't know that there's they're about to be hit, that their name is out there, or that they've been found out that they have that kind of jacket when, let's say, their case was not out on the news and they didn't know that somebody found out about them. They might just think everything's fine. They're telling their lies, that they're in here for robbery or some other thing, and they might think everybody believes that, and then all of a sudden one day they're stabbed to death or brutalized real bad because somebody did know and put the word out to those who do that kind of violence to them. Well, in my case, I refused to get off the main line, and just, I guess, our Heavenly Father and angels protected me, because there's no other answer for that. That happened actually many times. But the one time I just explained a short time ago on the other call about the brain damage was for a different reason, but it's that, that kind of thing that I was often under the gun of. Well, now I'm on what's called these SNY yards, sensitive needs yards, which are phasing out right now. CDC is now phasing out permanently, I guess. So there won't be this kind of division between those kind of people that are running those gangs. They're mixing them up with those who have been even, in the PC. I never went to, quote-unquote, protective custody, but I did go to sensitive needs yard, and it was when the last time the staff set me up to be murdered at High Desert State Prison. A guy slashed me across the face under my eye while the guard was, refused to unlock my cell, waiting for a guy to run up the stairs and come running at me and slash me across the face. I'd just gotten out of the hospital, almost starved to death, and just got out of my wheelchair on the first floor, and they made me walk up to the second floor and hobble over to my cell, and then the guard left me standing there, wouldn't open my cell door until the guy ran up the stairs to slash me. So it was all planned with inmates and guards and whatnot. That was at High Desert Prison, which is the worst prison in California right now. Has your entire 36 years been spent in California prisons? Have you ever been out of California? No, I've never been out of California.
Okay, just curious. Okay, all right.
I've a couple of times. a couple of times I took a bus ride up into the first handful of miles up into Oregon State, but only on the bus because that was the easiest route to loop back around and go back down to Pelican Bay State Prison. But, so physically I left the state of California officially, but on the CDC bus just for, an hour or two's ride through Oregon. But short of that, I've never been out of California. I've never been to another prison or jail outside of California.
Got it.
So that's another episode I wanted to mention about Michael Powers, David Gene Lewis, and Garcia. Those guards that did prison time on that were released years and years and years ago. I have no idea what happened to them. I hope I don't get retaliation from them for this if they ever hear this out there. But I want you to put it out there.
Okay.
I wanted to mention we're going to run out of time here pretty quick again. I won't call back again, but I wanted to mention the next issue I had on my list was about slander and libel that's done to us with total impunity by the courts. And it's starting to affect me right now because the courts, the DA and all his crew that, have proven like in 3552 falsified all the evidence against me. But all that stuff that they did that's now been proven to have been falsified, planted, manufactured, fabricated, whatnot, is still in the record as things that occurred according to the DA. And even though the courts have all the courts involved in my case have seen the 3552 at some point, or at least it's been sent to them, they had a duty to look into it, and either wouldn't or did, and they know the stuff is falsified. But the way they operate is they put all that stuff online now since the Internet's been created sometime thereafter. They put all that stuff online so everybody has access to the courts slandering our names, slandering my name, saying, not only that I'm a murderer, but that I did this and this and this and this and this, which the DA alleged, shot the guy in the back and all this stuff, which is just a pile of lies that I've proven is a pile of lies. And yet, the thousands or millions of people that might see that stuff from the courts, and, most people still pay such high regard and respect for judges and think they're basically honest and good people and they're to be looked up to. They take that as real and as factual, and that's so that's slander and libel on my name. But it's out there, and it's something I just have to live with until I can get out and get exonerated. I don't think I'll ever be exonerated while I'm in prison. I used to think so for most of my years in here, but they keep me in here so that I can't get exonerated. But once I get out, which I think is going to be before too much longer, that's top priority for me in light of everything else I'll be doing with my careers and my living life and having some joy in my life and maybe a family and that sort of thing. The top thing is always going to be to get this monkey off my back of this conviction and become exonerated and hopefully compensated as well. So, just wanted to put out there how they slander us. And right now that's starting to affect. I have one really strong Christian supporter that grew up with me in years of junior high school and high school, and he's been one of the few people from that era of my life that have stuck with me up into recent years. And he just recently was given a bunch of information from another unknown source from my class of 72 also about all that stuff that they've read from what the courts put out there online and what the court transcripts say. And the transcripts are accessible to anybody as well, public information. So there's no case I've ever known of, nobody that's ever filed on this, at least successfully, about how they can slander and libel our names, our reputations, when we've proven these things false. But as long as the conviction still is intact, they act like that's sufficient to be allowed to put that out there with impunity. So to me, it's a big and a major issue. And now it's adversely affecting other people who are now passing that information on to yet other friends, to other people through Facebook and whatever other contact, to say, they might not even be saying, I don't know if this is true, but here's a bunch of this information that makes me look real bad, and they send it on to another person and another person and another person. There goes the domino tree of more and more people being fed that information. And that's, potentially very damaging for my reputation and credibility and such, which, as you know, I work very hard to make sure every detail of every document that's ever put out on my Facebook or my website, I make sure it's accurate. And if somebody puts something something out there that's not accurate, which happens a lot of time. It happens very frequently because they think it's accurate, but everybody that hears a story and they pass that story on in their own words changes things just a little bit. We all do it. It's just in human nature. And so they don't realize when it goes through several hands, it changes drastically sometimes by the third or fourth or fifth or 10th person. And so I always correct that. I'm a real stickler for that when I find out about it. That's how important it is for me to be totally accurate with all the information about my case, about my life, and so forth. So this is a big, major problem, and I just wanted to get that out there, that the courts act with total impunity to wreck our reputation. I bring this up now.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
Partly because I had it on my list already, but partly because it's happening with Brett Kavanaugh, and I don't know if he's innocent or guilty, what he's accused of. I see both sides of the story like everybody else, but just the fact that now, he's made the claim of how much damage it's done permanently to his life. I want to put it out there that the courts, all the way up to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, the second biggest court in the United States, and all the appellate courts in the federal, the district court in the federal, the appellate courts in the
You have 30 seconds remaining.
all of them, all three courts at the state level, all two courts on the federal level, not the Supreme Court at this point, are all guilty of slander and libel of my name and my reputation and such. And there's nothing I can do that I know of to put that in check. Okay, you got the floor, Rudy.
Well, our prayers are with you, and our Father is a Lord of justice.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
We serve a God of justice, and I believe that justice will happen free. We just ran out of time again.